there are several different regions in Burgundy. The main one that we think of is what we is under the general heading of the Côte d'Or, and that is made up of the Côte de Nuit and the Côte de Beaune. Now, Côte de Nuit is based around the town of Nuit-Saint-Georges, and the Côte de Beaune is based around the town of Beaune. And traditionally, back in the past for the past 200 years, Nuit-Saint-Georges and Beaune were the two towns that where the wine merchants were based. I mean, you didn't used to have like winemakers making wine. You had grape growers, and then you had negociant houses that bought the grapes, and they'd make the wine. And they were based either in Nuit-Saint-Georges or Beaune. So then the region got to be known as the Côte de Nuit or the Côte de Beaune. And today we group them together because for sort of, I guess, the political, more political divisions than agricultural. But the Côte d'Or is made up of those two regions. Now, it's interesting, but I don't know that this necessarily has anything to do with the other. It's interesting that those two regions have very distinct geological makeups. There are two main geological plates that work down this valley. This valley is about 30 miles long and about a mile wide. It runs from Dijon down to almost to Chalon-sur-Saône. And it's really delimited, but there are two very distinct geological plates there. One comes up from up north, and is really old, and that's where the Côte de Nuit wines come from. And the Côte de Nuit wines are the famous red wines. That's where you have the Vosne Romanés, the Gevrey Chambertin, the Chambord-Musigny, the Moray Saint-Denis, the Grand Cru of that whole area there. And then once you get when you get south of Nuit-Saint-Georges, there's this area of sort of like quarries. It's not really vineyard land, but then you get down to the Côte de Beaune, and there another plate comes in from behind and lays on top of this other geological plate, and so the whole profile changes. It's not just red wine anymore; it's red wine and white wine, and they're not these big muscular reds. They tend to be sort of brighter fruit, fresher. More elegant, I guess you'd say, and these are so it becomes two very distinct regions. I have to mention this because it's for me it's passionate. This idea of the geology, where the Côte de Nuit geological plate goes underground at where it meets the Côte de Beaune, it comes back up a little bit later, and it comes back up in an area where the very best white wines are grown. So the very best red wines of Burgundy are also grown on the very same geological plate as the very best white wines of Burgundy, and that's a whole other discussion. We could talk for half an hour about that, but that's the thing about this area is that it's so complex and so it's so fascinating. It's held people's imagination. Now there are other areas in Burgundy that are producing great wine too. Just to the south of where these two regions that we're talking about is the Côte Chalonnaise, and it's based around the town of Chalon-sur-Saône. And there, rather than having a contiguous vineyard from north to south, you've got 5 different zones in the area. And they each produce different types of wine. There's one that's called Bouzeron, and it's specialized in a grape variety we haven't even talked about. It's called Aligoté. It's white. There's Givry, which is predominantly red. There's Rouy, which is red and white. There's Mercurey, which is predominantly red. And then there's an area called Montagny, and that's predominantly white. So these are areas where they grow grapes based on the soil type, but that soil type is not sort of a contiguous whole as it is in the Côte de Beaune. Further south from there, you go into the area that's called the Mâconnais, and that's where the most famous wine from there is called Pouilly-Fuissé, and everybody knows about Pouilly-Fuissé. That was the bad white wine in every Asian restaurant in the 1950s. It was just, that's how it was kind of known. Things have changed now. The Pouilly-Fuissé now has come into its own. It has Premier Cru as of the past few years, and it's now seen as a region of potential. This is the area around Pouilly-Fuissé has been known for wines that are known as Saint-Véran or Macon Village and that kind of stuff. But now this is, because it's an area that's sort of under development. They're ripping up all the old red wine grapes, which was Gamay from down there. They're ripping that all up, replanting it in white, and a whole generation of young producers are just flocking down there, and it's a very, very exciting time in terms of young new producers who are working sort of organically, biodynamically, and making a name for themselves in an area where they can actually afford to have some vineyards. Then there's the area up around Chablis, which is not even it's a 2.5-hour drive from here. But the Burgundians claim it because the Chablis wine is so good. The people in Chablis say they're not Burgundian, but down here in this area, we say they are. And it's around the town of Auxerre, and there's an area called the Auxerrois. And there's some fabulous wine going on up there, but really one of the great white wines and one of the great white wine values in all of Burgundy is Chablis, and that's why we just won't let them go. And then there are minor regions around. The one that's probably most worthy of note is an area called the Châtillonnais, and you'd never have heard of it, but it's the area right to the south where Champagne ends and politically Burgundy begins. They make champagne. They're not allowed to call it champagne because they're across the borderline, but it's exactly the same soil, it's exactly the same sort of climate, and they make what they call Crémant de Bourgogne. And if you're interested in sparkling wine, it's one of the great deals in the Western world, because they can't call it champagne, they can only call it Crémant de Bourgogne. Anyway, those are the main regions. There, as with everything else in Burgundy, there are always exceptions, but we can go into that at some other time.
Hello, I'm Dennis Sherman from BurgundyWine.com. We're based in Burgundy and have been for over 35 years. We specialize in small production, hidden gem winemakers, and we deliver their wines directly to your door at prices that will convince you when we say Great Burgundy does not have to be expensive. If you can't come to Burgundy, we'll bring Burgundy to you. So join us at BurgundyWine.com, where shipping is always included on case quantities.